On January 15th of 2020, Charles McCormick was shot in a strip mall by a lone gunman. There will be no question about that. You will watch the videotape. There will also be no question whatsoever. Leroy Whitaker did not pull that trigger. Leroy Whitaker had nothing to do with the death of Charles McCormick. That's what the evidence will show. You're gonna watch a video of Charles McCormick being chased down and shot. The shooter, the lone gunman in that video is not Leroy Whitaker. So how are we here? Why are we here? In this room, everything changes. See, before we come into this room, the state of Florida has the absolute power, the choice, the prerogative to charge or not charge whoever they want. But once we come in here to our Hall of Justice, they must prove their allegations. They must prove their allegations with actual, credible evidence. And I urge you to write right now in the notebooks that were provided to you a little topic I suggest to you. Evidence of Leroy Whitaker's participation in this murder. And ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be one thing and only one thing at the very end of all the testimony, everything that you're going to be presented. It's going to be one name only, Dominique Barner. That's it. That is it. The state star witness of which their house of cards in their allegations against Mr. Whitaker will collapse. Dominique Barner, an admitted two-time killer, paid for, self-proclaimed, paid for assassin. Dominique Barner will waltz into this courtroom and he will try to fill the blatant holes in the state's case. Their star witness will explain to you, well, you know, on January 15th, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office hauls me in. See, I don't just have tattoos on my arms. I have 1993 strapped right on my arm. Pretty distinctive. And Barbara Buckley did describe that in detail. And so the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office was able to put together a photo spread within hours of Barbara Buckley's home being invaded by Dominique Barner. And lo and behold, she was, in no uncertain terms, you're gonna meet her. She's gonna tell you all. Dominique Barner sure scared me. Dominique Barner came into my home. Dominique Barner choked me out. Dominique Barner got me to the point where I just kind of finally faked passing out and sat on my couch and then ultimately smoked a cigarette. Dominique Barner was caught. And to hear the state of Florida talk about Dominique Barner, one might think, one might assume, Dominique Barner must have walked in on January 15th and said, oh, I need to tell all my sins. Oh, I need to confess. But that's not what the evidence is going to show. What you're going to learn is that Dominique Barner came in on January 15th and he told just enough about himself to get him off his case. So let him go. He's still in jail, but he's not charged with murder yet. But then you're going to hear, as the murders pile up, see, there's this pesky second murder that you'll hear Dominique Barner was in part of, has admitted to premeditating, has admitted to pleading to that charge. of a whole separate case where a truly innocent bystander gets killed. Because unfortunately, Dominic Barner misses who he was really gunning for. Interestingly enough, you will ultimately hear Abdul Robinson Sr., also part of that murder, also pled to that separate murder. But as those charges started piling up, Dominic Barner realized, I need to do what I do. I'll cooperate. See, by the time that Leroy Whitaker and Dominic Barner started spending any time together, Dominic Barner had already gotten his first cooperation against somebody completely different out of the way. Because that's what he does. Abdul Robinson Sr., same thing. Abdul Robinson Sr. has been cooperating since before Leroy Whitaker was born. That's what the evidence will show. But Dominic Barner will be the one and only piece of evidence the state will even attempt to convince you that Leroy Whitaker had any part in the death of Charles McCormick. The evidence will not be there. You're going to hear from Barbara Buckley, and I'll tell you up front, I think you'll like her. She's feisty. No one pulls anything over her eyes. And she's going to walk in and she's going to honestly talk to you about that morning. How it was just a normal morning, how she sees two people in her house, and she says in very colorful language, "Get the hell out of my house!" Dominic Barner didn't accept that, and then was violent with her. And because of that, she was able, in no uncertain terms, with confidence, with 1993 emblazoned on his arm, she picks him out. Dominic Barner did that. The second person, the other person in her home, she can't identify. What will the state try to rely on? Dominic Barner. Dominic Barner and Abdul Robinson Sr. have learned the system. They've learned what to say and how to say it. I urge you, listen carefully as they describe their cooperation agreements. For the two murders that Dominic Barner will tell you in no uncertain terms that he thought about, that he wanted to happen, he put into action, and did commit the murder. For two human beings being gone, what does he look forward to? Well, he has every hope and expectation of walking amongst us again in 20 short years. No mandatory life imprisonment for Dominic Barner. Dominic Barner, by singing the company line, can look forward to 20 years. That's the state evidence. You're going to hear from DNA experts. And I urge you right now, as I remember from jury selection, some of you had done 23andMe, Ancestry.com. I urge you to listen carefully. You're going to hear words like, well, this unknown profile, well, it's consistent with perhaps Mr. Whitaker, and provide computations to try to explain that to you. It is not, I submit to you, and you'll ultimately evaluate for yourselves, like what was revealed for each of you when you did 23andMe and Ancestry.com.
Objection, Judge.
In the ground. I'll sustain that objection.
You're going to hear and see from FBI agent Mr. Corley. And he's going to actually map out for you different phone numbers, and he'll tell you up front, these are approximations of where these phones might have been communicating with towers. And it'll be a lot of convoluted radio waves, all that kind of thing. But he'll try to tell you where he believes these phones were in general terms in Jacksonville. What he won't be able to tell you is who was using those phones or when. And you'll have to listen carefully, and I urge you to do so, for all of the testimony in regards to whose phone is who, and how in the world do we know that person is using it. One thing you'll learn from Agent Corley as well as Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is that oftentimes they'll get phone records for a month or maybe even 2 months and go through the phones to determine who are these people talking to. Just as a way, an investigative tool, if you will, to determine who's actually using these phones. Ultimately, no such evidence will be presented like that in this case, as will there be many things that you will wonder about but will not be presented. Why? Because the evidence doesn't exist. At the close of all the evidence, after you carefully and critically analyze it, you will realize the state of Florida is on a quest for conviction. They will do so on a house of cards of Dominique Barner, the two-time murderer, paid-for assassin. And at the close of all the evidence, you will ask, you will suggest and demand that you render the only verdicts that will be appropriate based on the evidence you receive. And those are verdicts of not guilty for Leroy Whitaker. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Schlax. All right, at this time then I'm going to ask Mr. Whitaker's jury to have a step back into